What's up y'all, Squid here. I picked up my physical copy of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater the second it came out, played through it on my Series X, and honestly, I loved it. I kept myself off social media for the weeks leading up to release so I could experience the game without any bias. But after I completed my first playthrough, I went online to see what others thought and was caught off guard. Everyone seemed pissed and focused on the game's performance, but my experience was completely different. After installing the game, which was about 90 gigs, I was so giddy to start, and not gonna lie, I was in awe of what I was seeing. The game was absolutely stunning and completely faithful to the original. The atmosphere I remembered playing as a kid was still there. The new controls refreshed and modernized the gameplay, and all of the iconic moments were brought back with a more technically impressive beauty. I had similar feelings when I watched the Halo 2 anniversary cutscenes for the first time. Anyways, I had a ball completing the game, and was reminded why I fell in love with the Metal Gear Solid series. Personally, I was content with Delta. Since I beat the game, I was now open to watch videos about it to learn more and see the game's overall reception to the community. Immediately, I discovered that a lot of people were voicing their displeasure with the game's performance, and rightfully so. However, I don't think these performance dips were enough to taint the experience of the game, at least from my experience playing on an Xbox Series X with a 24-inch 1080p monitor. Going into it, I was aware that the game was made in Unreal 5, a graphically intensive engine. And to be honest, with the state of gaming in 2025, I had already set some lower expectations of how the game was going to run. In my eyes, a locked 60 FPS at a native 1080p would be too good to be true, and I was right. So I didn't set myself up for disappointment. Still, I think the lack of optimization is the one thing that holds this game back from being an absolutely perfect remaster. It's a real shame that the subpar performance gets all of the attention, since I believe this game should be celebrated a lot more. Negative headlines will detract new, prospective players to the series when this is a time for Metal Gear Solid to reach new fans. Even though I absolutely 1000% agree that games in 2025 should run at a native 1080p and locked 60 FPS at the very minimum, I also think that people are overly eager to completely disregard and trash a game if it doesn't meet these requirements. It reminded me that performance isn't everything, and I have experienced this before. I could have dismissed Cyberpunk on PC for its performance at launch, but I didn't, and I had an unforgettable and awesome experience. Did you also know that a lot of our favorite games in the Xbox 360 and PS3 era didn't run at the true HD resolution those consoles supported and could also suffer from frame drops? Yet we still absolutely love and adore them. I mean, even the original Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater on the PS2 could have frame drops from its 30 FPS, but I've never heard anyone argue or complain about that. I'm not trying to defend developers for not optimizing and polishing their games, but I'm just also pointing out that in this era, people didn't fuss over performance as much as they do now. It's still hard to make that point since performance issues weren't so egregious and common back then like they are now. And back then, developers were always accounting for hardware limitations. For example, a titan in the industry, Call of Duty, always valued a locked 60 FPS throughout its entire life. In the past, they've chosen to run games at lower resolutions and use upscaling because they knew the importance of maintaining 60 FPS to the gameplay. But even then, there could still be noticeable dips in frames per second. Even with the newest Call of Duty titles targeting 120 FPS, they don't maintain a steady frame rate, consistently dipping. It really is disappointing that Metal Gear Solid Delta isn't running at a locked 60 FPS, but it's seriously not something that should deter you from playing the game if it interests you. A game like Call of Duty Black Ops 1 was infamous for having FPS issues on the PlayStation 3, but it's still regarded as one of the greatest games of all time. I'm not trying to dismiss anyone who has an issue with performance, because quite frankly, I have an issue with it too, and it's important that we let our feedback be heard. Although Konami has had shaky releases historically, it seems that they are somewhat now on the right course as they have listened to feedback and made some fixes to the Master Collection's flawed release. They may be likely to do the same with Metal Gear Solid Delta, if it's even possible. It's at least a good sign since other games with issues have no hope and should genuinely scare their fans away. For example, look at 343 Industries. Almost every Halo title that they've touched has compromised itself to meet the bare minimum performance for its hardware. And in the long run, it destroyed Halo. I mean, the last time that I was genuinely shocked and completely disappointed with the game was when I loaded up the Halo Infinite beta for the first time, and this was even after the community outrage of the flat look, pop-ins, and lack of detail from the game reveal. The most resource-intensive game to develop in the franchise was also the ugliest and poor-performing one in the franchise, and by a significant margin. Another example is Game Freak with Pokemon Violet and Scarlet. If you looked at the game, you would think it was a joke at release, and it only became playable by upgrading to the Switch 2. These are the types of cases where it's justified for the community to be furious with a game to the point where they avoid it entirely and tell everyone they know to do the same. I don't think Metal Gear Solid Delta falls under this category. With the power of modern hardware, you can't deny that it's also truly a shame that game developers don't value performance anymore. It's about the minute graphical enhancements to market in-game screenshots and sell the newest hardware, scamming people essentially out of buying a complete game that will work well on their setup. It also feels as if these new graphical features stunted the 9th generation of consoles and wasted their potential. Whereas 20 years ago, hardware limitations drove developers to solve problems with creativity. It's a relief to see new games like Battlefield 6 reject the choice of having something like ray tracing implemented in their game, as the ROI is not worth it, and most people don't even have the newest gear to run the latest graphical features anyways. Unreal 5 is actually an amazing and beautiful game engine, and even though it's graphically intensive, it can still work with some effort. It doesn't deserve the hate it gets if a developer lazily uses it. I mean, for crying out loud, when the engine was released, Fortnite was somehow able to run with Unreal 5 features such as Lumen and Nanite at 60 FPS on Series X and PS5. That's actually incredible, and it surprised even the Digital Foundry guys. And I believe the reason is because of Epic's care to optimize for the game. Albeit they probably have a lot more hands on deck compared to the MGS Delta team. But another example could be the Silent Hill F game coming out. It runs on Unreal 5, but is appearing to have a solid frame rate. Sometimes I think gamers, especially content creators and reviewers, are so focused on tearing games apart that they forget what it's like to just enjoy a game. That was me with Metal Gear Solid Delta, and that was also me with Metal Gear Solid 3 all those years ago. I didn't care about the highest fidelity or locked frame rates. I was just hooked on the game for what it was. So that's why I wanted to make this video, to remind you guys to just take it easy, step back, and remember why you're playing the game in the first place. Thank you for checking out the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and consider subscribing. As always, please share your thoughts below, as I'm curious to know your experience with the game if you have any feelings similar to mine. Anyways, have a beautiful day. Peace.